This video you're about to watch is part of the How to Play Spacewolves course. Now, this is one of 21 videos that you will get access to alongside your journey on our course. Now, this video in particular shows off deployment and tips and tricks you can use to maximize your deployment stage as a Spacewolf player. Now, we also have modules for every detachment in this codex alongside the Stormlance Task Force and the Champions of Fenris Grotmus detachment. All included. We've got an overview, an example list, and advanced tactics for these detachments alongside our Playing Spacewolf module, which includes a SWOT analysis, includes unit spotlights for this book and the Space Marine Codex. And then on top of that, you've got this deployment video you're about to watch and a how to beat Spacewolves. If you are an enemy of Fenris and an enemy of the Spacewolves chapter, you still have some content available on this, as well as understanding the faction as a whole. Now, do click the link in the description below. It does drop on the 12th of July. So this is an early access video to show you what you could get on this course. And we hope to see you in our Discord community and as part of our How to Play series.
So in this part of the Spacewolves How to Play Masterclass series, we're going to take a look at deployment. And with Jord, we're set up here and we're going to run through some deployment ideas and things you can do to help you score, help you position, and just maximize your deployment. So Jord, what we got?
Well, like you said, we have to consider a few things when deploying. It's not about how do I get the most damage out of my opponent. We have to consider turn one is the main consideration when it comes to deployment, because what happens if you draw an action card? Have you got the units ready to do that? Have you got the units ready to prepare yourself for a second turn primary score? And that's where you need to start to double down on all these things. And that'll help you again when it comes to list building.
Exactly that, because it's not necessarily data sheets and damage that win games. It's how much can you score and how much primary can you hold.
Exactly, it's positioning. Position is the key thing. So we're not going to put down 2,000 points of an army and show you how to deploy that. We're going to put down, or we have put down, units that you'll see in the Spacewolves list, and we're going to show you the key things you need to consider when deploying those units, and maybe some tips and tricks alongside those as well. Yeah. Now, the first thing you have to consider at any game is infiltrate. Infiltrate is usually the first thing that your opponent will ask you, have you got any infiltrators? Because that will determine who, if they win the roll-off, are they going to deploy first or are you going to deploy first?
Yeah.
So, have we got infiltrators?
We do. We've got 2 units.
We've got 2 units of scouts on the board. And most of the lists we talk about, we only include 1, but this will show you 2 ways to actually deploy scouts. And depending on your terrain layout, this will obviously change how you deploy, because, again, that's why we can't do 2,000 points of this is exactly how you deploy, because there's so many terrain layouts and missions that will inevitably change all of that, right?
Situational, but it's a rough guide. I like to see as each unit in the army has a role. So you'll have your infiltrators, you have your move blockers, you've got your scorers, you've got your damage dealers. And if you can apply, when you're building your list, you know, what unit and what is this purpose, then it will help you so much when it comes to deploying.
No, absolutely. So if we take a look at these infiltrators, so the first ones we've got is here. We've got 5 scouts that we've infiltrated into this terrain feature. Now, typically, you'd probably keep them an inch away from the wall if you can. On this terrain layout in particular, this is GW open. There is quite a few firing lanes. Now, if we have a look here, if we're doing Crucible of Battle deployment and our opponent decides to deploy behind this building, they could quite easily get out and shoot into this terrain feature. However, if you touch them against the wall, they have to come out a little bit further to actually get some shots off onto the scouts.
Yeah.
So what this means is we're forcing our opponent to come close to us to get this. And as a melee player, that's what we want, right? We want our opponent to put assets out so we can charge and get into combat. The scouts have gone here to enable us to hold the primary with a cheap unit and potentially score us a card in no man's land.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, as you'll go through this course, we talk about Grey Hunters a lot as our primary holding unit, or one of the best versions for that. We've got a 10-man unit behind here with a Wolf Priest and then a Ballistus just in tow next to it. Now, the reason for this is because inevitably we do want these Grey Hunters to end up on this terrain feature. Now, this will depend on your opponent, because if your opponent does have shooting assets, they're more than likely going to put something over here to move out and shoot onto this objective, because that's just the nature of it, right?
But unless they've got a hell of a lot of shots, the chances of them picking up 10 OC3, 2 wound model each.
It's not exactly. It's not massively likely they can do that, but that comes down to your threat analysis. Could they do that? Maybe they could, but for the most part, they shouldn't be able to, which is why we have the Ballistus next to it. And that could be a Gladiator, a Predator, any shooting platform that you have, you want to deploy next to the Grey Hunters, because if our opponent does, because as of right now, they could shoot us from this point. That is one of the downsides of having a 10-man unit. But us, by putting as minimal out as possible for them to be able to shoot, it does give our opponent the option of moving out, getting some shots off. They, in turn, are not shooting the scouts.
Yeah.
But if they do shoot this unit, they've brought out something incredible, like something powerful to put some damage out. Yeah. So we have our retaliation unit to do that. Now, for the most part, this will probably deter your opponent from actually shooting this unit. And this is all on the pretense that you're going second. So if you're going first, then they are just going to move straight away into this staging point.
And they're safe.
And they're safe. Now, from this point, with a movement and an advance, you could get them onto this objective into this corner, which is why the scouts are there to keep hold of it for a turn at least.
Yeah.
And then if our opponent charges them, they have to come out the other side. We then get to kill a unit in return and get onto the objective, fulfilling multiple roles.
Well, that's the beauty about the scouts as well, because if you go first, you could either move back into safety, draw them forward again, or if they had something behind there, which is like a tank or something with damage, and you got the first turn, you could move forward and just block them from even position. And that's the beauty about these scouts right here as well. So, like, you know, the beauty of these infiltrators is if we lose the roll-off and we go second, we'll just move these behind the wall, an inch off the wall, which not only stops a charge, but it protects our units from being blocked in.
Exactly. So, especially with the ones in the middle, we are looking at moving them an inch behind the wall to protect them. And like you said on this one, if we wanted to, we could roll the advance first with the Grey Hunters on the deployment line, see what they roll. If they roll high enough to get onto the objective, but then the scouts roll changes, and then they can move forward, advance as far as possible, and create a positional move block to prevent that from happening. Potentially, if it is, let's say, we're playing into a Marine equivalent army and they have a gladiator themselves that's sat behind here, we could move and charge it turn one, potentially.
And it's also, again, depending on the cards we pull. If we were to pull like Aerodonal or Locust, these are perfectly set up. We can move forward onto the point and still create a move block. Or if we get Cleanse, we've got 2 units in place, move into safety, we can cleanse, and now we've got perfect ambush right here. So when they come and take it back on their expansion, we can just take it back.
Exactly. And if the mission cards change or anything evolves over time, it's any sort of cards that are requiring you to do actions on objectives, anything that requires you to be in the midboard. That's why infiltrators are great, because you have early access to these cards. If you draw them, you should be able to score them early. And that's why you have infiltrators and enlisters to do that, but to prevent your opponent from being able to hit you back on a return, right? So we've already made clear what we're doing here and how to put Grey Hunters onto an objective if the terrain layout isn't as favourable as, let's say, UKTC, where they could move into our natural expansion and be safe from all firing angles. So that's more so where you need to decide that on the terrain factor. But using firing support to protect them and deter your opponent from even looking at them is a great way to do that turn one.
Exactly.
Now, the midboard, we've already spoken about the scouts over here. I think it's important that we mentioned the next drop, which will probably be, we're starting to put down these cheap units, which are like the Fenrisian Wolves. They're cheap. We know we want to just, we know where they're going to go. One's going to go in the middle. One's going to go on our opponent's objective, because these guys are here to deny primary. Or B, score us cards. Once the scouts have gone out and done their thing, let's say they get picked up the next turn, the Wolves can then go out and do another card in the middle or somewhere else on the board where they need to. So that's where you can use them for different functions. You could even have these scouts go into this building with their scout move and then use the Wolves to do actions turn one.
Exactly.
Because they're cheaper than the scouts, so then you're saving the scouts for a future one.
Yeah, and because you've got a character unit behind here within 6 inches, it gives them those.
Well, this is why Bjorn then goes in the middle too, or any character you have. You could have Logan or something in the centre that moves into this building and does that for you, like you said.
You're just creating nice little staging points then and bait for your opponent. Like, they know that they need to get onto that point and take them off, otherwise they don't score primary. But then all you're doing then is giving them cheap units that are just there just to bait and to bring your opponent forward.
But that's the whole point in the Fenrisian Wolves, is they're there to just bait your opponent. And I know it's not nice saying we're going to throw out the dogs and let them die, but it is the same thing, that they're the cheapest unit that we can do this with. And as long as you're building into Space Wolf characters to give them the OC, they're almost perfect for this role. And
I think that's why in a melee army that infiltrators are crucial, because if you was to lose that roll-off and allow your opponent to position overwatch threats or firing lanes, it's very difficult there for you to walk out and position where you can get shot. But having these infiltrators already in place on the objective and you lose a roll-off, it forces them now to come and do something, which just brings them closer to you.
Well, we mentioned about the scouts charging into like a predator or a gun, a vehicle of an equivalent sort of status. Well, you could scout as far as possible or as close as possible to that unit, knowing you're going to sacrifice that unit and move in your then turn and charge. And you're in your opponent's deployment zone turn 1. You do that if your opponent doesn't have access to shoot, fall back and shoot.
Yeah. Because
then you know the Grey Hunters are safe on this objective. You know whatever's in this middle is safe from your opponent. That's what scouts can do. Yeah. That's if you want to play aggressive with them. They also have the option to come off if they're within 6. So once they've done their role, a scoring a card, a positional card, or whatever it might be, they can then come off the board. And use this as an example for any infiltrate, whether that even be a lieutenant with combi weapon. Their role still stays the same in the middle to do actions.
Exactly.
We also have a transport, an impulse, or something you might see in a few Space Wolves lists or might consider when you're looking at transporting maybe head takers or blade guards. These are great to put in the middle or even on your natural expansion over here, because their role, turn 1, is to effectively move into the terrain. So in this case, this can move right there, touch the wall, and you know in your next turn, you're going to disembark 3, move your 7, charge. If you have Ragnar in the unit, you're moving 7 plus D6 from an advanced end charging. So from the middle ruin, you've literally able to get into your opponent's deployment zone with no problem at all. And that's why the transports then become sort of like a taxi service, where you're
just leapfrogging.
You're leapfrogging. You then put another unit behind, ready to, once Ragnar, whoever it is, disembarks charges, you put them in. They then do the same the next turn, and you keep doing that as one tactic you can do.
And then once you've sent all of your infantry up, you can then use that, come around here, and you can be a holding piece.
Exactly. So you've got so many options. But even if it is in the centre, usually there are terrain systems that actually allow you to do cards from the terrain feature in the middle on the midboard. So you could even use that with the vehicle there.
Absolutely.
Now, we have quite a few larger units with Space Wolves. We do have Thunderwolves. Now, Thunderwolves will probably feature in only a couple of lists for the most part because of their size of the bases, and it depends on the stratagems you have. Because if you don't have a stratagem to go through walls, they're less likely unless you're playing Stormlance.
You're then taking a profile which is fast on paper, and it just becomes very slow because you can't go through terrain.
Which is why, exactly, and that's why you need a detachment like Stormlance Task Force to give yourself the extra advance and charge to get past the terrain. Or you could have like Saga of the Beast Slayer, where you have go through terrain with Thunderwolves, which allows you to, which changes their position to maybe be in the centre and then move through the terrain feature in the middle to access where they need to.
Absolutely.
We've put them here on this board because as of right now, there are no angles unless our opponent exposes themselves from the middle ruin or from their expansion ruin to shoot them. And if they do that, it's the same premise as over here. We then have units staging in this ruin to hit whatever comes out to shoot them. So you're using like a bait tactic, knowing that they should survive. Because if, let's say a ballistas equivalent pops out and shoots the Thunderwolf, because they could get to this point here and shoot. Well, they kill one, we remove it. Well, now they're not able to be shot at all.
Exactly, don't cover.
And now the rest of it then moves out and picks up whatever comes out. So it's about anti-trading, but restricting firing lanes is what we're looking at.
Absolutely.
And then if they do get a chance, make sure it's only a one and done. That's all they can do is one activation, and then you're safe. That's what you need to look at. We've also put our Fenrisian Wolves here to move onto that objective, and then maybe string out, get the OC from the battle leader, and then be able to deny our opponent primary some OC.
Or come out and do a cleanse.
Or cleanse, or whatever it might be, right? So hopefully you're seeing the different ways we can stage, and we are going to look at staging as a concept for the Champions of Fenris Detachment Advanced Tactics. So when you watch that, you'll see even more ways we talk about staging as a concept and why we stage. Now, in terms of order of placement of drops, this Grey Hunter unit is always the last.
Absolutely.
We have to drop that last because otherwise we're giving our opponent the information early of what we're trying to do here. We want to maybe place our infiltrators first, then we want to place Fenrisian wolves, then we can place the things we know are shored up, like Bjorn's probably shored up. We probably have something on the home objective shored up, right? We know that our head takers are going over there, or Impulse, or whatever it might be. We know where they're set. We know we want to move into these staging points with our melee units. But we do know that this is susceptible.
And I think when it comes to deployment, a lot of people can get caught up on what you're playing against, like, oh, melee threat or shooting threat or whatever it might be. But I think if you go back to what we said at the beginning, if you look at your list and each unit has a role, it makes things 10 times easier to deploy. As long as you know that these are my scoring pieces, these are my holding pieces, these are my damage pieces, and you have that staging in mind, you'll be fine, whatever you come against.
Exactly. Like, you know that on this objective, we want cheap trading units that can go out into our opponent's natural expansion, the one they want to hold for the game, because we know we're sacrificing them to deny our opponent points. But we also know on our objective, we want to keep our units alive that have high OC, that can actually hold the point for us. So we have to protect them a little bit more on this flank. But we also want to look at the firing lanes. And on this map in particular, there's quite a few firing lanes. We obviously have down there into our opponent's deployment zone. Our opponent could step out here and get into our deployment zone, so they could do the same. But once you're out into the middle, all objectives are shootable. All objectives are shootable out here. You could shoot from there. I mean, even from here, we mentioned there's a point over to that point there. So there are quite a few firing lanes that you have to consider. So if you're bringing into maybe some predators and followed up with iron priests, that's where you need to maybe put one of your tanks out here. Maybe say this is a predator. Because you know your firing lane, you could move here, and then you've got firing angles into your opponent's deployment zone potentially, right?
And even if you was to come against, say, a fully melee and they've got no shooting threat whatsoever, nothing necessarily changes here, but it allows you to maybe be a little bit more defensive and aggressive with those shooting platforms, where you could potentially stage this here, knowing they can't shoot you, stage this here, knowing they can't shoot you, and you've got lanes straight away, so it maybe makes your opponent then decide, well, I need to get in quick, I want to be quick, because these firing lanes are there, I can't be as offensive as I want to be, so now I have to come back, which forces them back.
Exactly. And then that's where we supplement that with our own combat units, with our staging points, which we have in our deployment zone, and ready to strike when our opponent does give us the assets to be able to hit them, right?
Definitely.
Now, another asset that we want to look at here is our Vectora from Logan Grimnar. Now, this is going to be a key piece to a lot of lists. I know people will take him just because he's really cool. Well, how do we get the most out of him? Well, we need to make sure he's there to debilitate our opponent's stratagem usage, right? Now, we know that strats are going to fulfill a few roles. One of them is offensive. They're going to boost our offensive capabilities of our opponent's units. They're either defensive, to be able to enable their units to survive, or they could be a utility strat, like holding an objective or going through walls or maybe coming on and off the board.
Or a reactive move.
Or a reactive move or something. And that's where you have to decide what you want him to do. Are you going to be a bit more defensive? Is he going to help you on your defensive flank to stop your opponent be as offensive into you? Do you want him to go into the middle to be able to stop your opponent from doing any reactive strats in the center of the board, or even on their objective there?
It could even come down to they need to get onto this point to score, and they fail the charge, and they need to command reroll, and this now has just completely shut down that play whatsoever.
Exactly.
If they are on here and they've done a cleanse, and it comes to your turn, and they have a strat for a reactive move, and they want to get away to keep their scoring pieces, and now they can't, that you've just traded down again. There's so many ways, like, the Vector is amazing, in my opinion.
No, it is. And I think it actually goes under the radar quite a bit in how useful a Vectora can be, because we can use Logan, like you said, to sit in the middle of the board and just protrude that 12-inch bubble and just be like, if you get near me, you've got one chance to use these stratagems. There's very rarely a situation someone could double use a stratagem. Now, that's where the questions need to come in. Do you have ways of reducing stratagem cost? Maybe like a captain for Space Marines or something of that equivalent, because that might reduce the influence he has. But then at the same time, it's rare that that's really a thing, isn't it?
And from placing here as well, a 12-inch aura is so big.
Well, if we look at it, 12 inches from that point covers pretty much the whole centre, as well as that objective there as well. He has so much aura then at that point. It's because of his massive base, isn't it? His base is so mighty that it's just able to hit whatever he needs to. But then he can when you want to have that go turn, he moves out and he shuts down the defensive strats. Maybe he stops a reactive move.
Absolutely.
Like, let's say your opponent's on that objective, but they've set up a reactive move and they're like, cool, I know if you get close, I'm just going to get away. He moves first and he goes, you can't do anything.
Or when somebody fails a 50-50 invulnerable save and it comes in clutch, where if they then command re-roll it and they know if they get a 50-50 chance of getting it and the game swung because of it, your boy here shuts it down and just prevents that.
Well, exactly. And this is why deploying Logan is important, whether that's you want him in the centre and you're starting him on the board, maybe he's running solo just for that Vectora, or he's in deep strike, that's where rapid ingress comes in. And when you're rapid ingress, you really need to look at your staging areas. So on this board, we have 3 as our own staging areas. So one of them will be this one, then we've got the centre, and then we've got that side. So depends where you want to hit. Now, for the most part, I would recommend probably going in the centre because you have the option then to go into 2 objectives. Whereas if you solely commit to that one objective there, he's stuck there, really, for the game.
Yeah. And also, you can just go off how you deploy, how your opponent deploys and what you're against, because there are a few armies out there that have incredible defensive stats, which they rely on, like the Knights with their 4 vulnerable save or Tyranids with a 5 of pain. This here completely destroys them.
Exactly. So please, when you're deploying your Space Wolves, please consider the placements of these units either to score your secondaries, make sure you have your Wolves ready to go out early onto these cards or onto these objectives to score you your cards, or your Infiltrators to do the same role. Maybe start with the Infiltrators doing some cards and then use the Wolves as your second wave, and then make sure all your combat units are ready to stage for that first turn, moving into the different areas on the board where you know you can stage safely. And then have your turn where you unleash the fury of Fenris and destroy your opponent on the tabletop.